Don't look back. We are leaving.
I'm afraid.
Get out of here!
Ask Daisy whether she wants rescuing, Lambert Ramsey said, after Wilna called her own sister a disgrace before the spring horse sale crowd. He stepped beside Daisy and laid one loose arm across her green-shawled shoulders, but he left Juniper's reins in her clenched hands. "Stand with me," Daisy whispered, so Lambert faced the laughter and said, "Then she rides with me, and if she permits it, I mean to court her." The laughter thinned until harness rings could be heard in the middle of Main Street. Boaz Tucker, standing outside the general store, lowered his ledger. The townspeople who had been pointing at the outcast Brennan sister discovered urgent business in the dust around their boots. Daisy did not look up. Her shoulders stayed rigid beneath Lambert's arm, and her knuckles showed white around the bay mare's reins. Lambert had the wealth, and the Ramsey name, to quiet a street. Yet the woman beside him did not look rescued. She looked braced for whatever he might take next. Everyone knew the version of Daisy's past Wilma had repeated for 10 years. A stolen horse, a smooth-talking trader, and a young woman who came home alone. Lambert also knew what a town could do with half a story. If he spoke carelessly now, Daisy would cease to be an outcast, only to become his charity, another thing the Ramsey fortune had bought. He loosened his arm without stepping away. The space on Daisy's right remained open. "The Ramsey spread needs a trainer," he said. "Miss Brennan has agreed to take Juniper for 30 days. He looked down at her. "Town or the ranch, Daisy? Your choice." She swallowed hard. The leather creaked in her hands. "The ranch." 30 minutes later they were riding west, the town shrinking into a smudge of gray timber and chimney smoke behind them. Lambert drove the buckboard, giving the matched team a steady pace. Daisy sat beside him, silent, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Juniper, the high-strung mare, was tied to the tailgate. When they reached the Ramsey ranch, Lambert did not steer toward the broad, 2-story house with its painted trim and deep veranda. He stopped at a solid log cabin near the training corrals. It had a clean stove, a sturdy door, and a clear view of the pastures. "Your wages go in the ledger at the same rate I would pay any trainer," Lambert said, setting the brake. "There's a bolt on the inside of that door. You answer to me for the horses, and you may leave whenever the work no longer suits you." Daisy looked from the cabin to the main house, then back at him. The guarded set of her mouth eased by a fraction. Whatever lodging she had expected, Lambert hoped she understood what he meant to offer work, not a favor. "Thank you, Mr. Ramsey," she said quietly. "Lambert," he corrected. The next morning, before the sun reached the eastern ridges, Lambert was at the holding pens in a faded canvas coat, checking a yearling's fetlocks, when he heard the soft, steady rhythm of Daisy's voice. He walked toward the training corral. Daisy was inside with Juniper. The mare was fine horseflesh, but a heavy-handed breaker in Kansas had taught her to expect pain. She went white-eyed at a coiled rope. Daisy carried neither rope nor whip. She only walked the circle with loose hands, speaking low enough that Lambert could not make out the words. Lambert leaned his forearms on the top rail. Money had never impressed him as much as competence, and what Daisy was doing required more judgment than any loud man with a spur would understand. Juniper suddenly snorted, trotted to the fence, stretched her neck over the rail, and clamped her teeth around the brim of Lambert's black Stetson before he could move. The mare trotted away, tossing the hat into the dirt near the water trough. Daisy stopped. She looked at the dusty hat, then at Lambert's bare head. Amusement flickered in her eyes before caution could smother it. "She appears to have formed an opinion of your standing in the territory, Lambert," Daisy said dryly. It was the first time she had used his name. It was also the first glimpse of the quick wit Lambert remembered from 10 years before, when Daisy had laughed without first looking to see who might punish her for it. Lambert didn't shout at the horse, he just crossed his arms. "I reckon she did. Are you going to get it back for me?" "I am a horse trainer," Daisy said, turning back to the mare. "Retrieving laundry is a separate fee." He let out a low breath that might have been a laugh. By week's end, the entry deadline for the Founders' Day Horse Fair was 12 days away. Breeders from across the territory would be there, and one good exhibition could fill a trainer's ledger for a year. Lambert found Daisy by the tack room, wiping down a bridle. "Boaz Tucker sent word by his clerk," Lambert said, resting a shoulder against the door frame. "He'll accept Juniper for the training exhibition." Daisy's hands went still. "Under whose name?" "The Ramsey spread." "And the trainer?" Lambert hesitated. "He said you may stand in the arena, provided there is no disturbance, but he will list only the Ramsey spread in the program. He calls it a matter of the town's decent reputation." Daisy carefully hung the bridle on a wooden peg. Her back was rigid. "He means he won't have a ruined woman's name printed next to the upstanding citizens." "I can buy the fair, Daisy," Lambert said quietly. "I can buy the grounds, the grandstand, and the printing press that makes the programs. I can make them put your name in letters 10 inches high." She turned fierce heat, replacing the caution in her eyes. "And then what? They'll whisper that I traded one rich man for another. They won't see a trainer. They'll see a woman who was bought. I need those 12 days, Lambert. I can have this mare ready without a crop. But my name goes on the official entry. Boaz may leave the program blank if he chooses. I will not leave myself blank." Lambert saw what the condition cost her, and what it protected. He did not answer with money. 12 days, he agreed. "We submit your name. Then Boaz decides what sort of man he means to be." The training grew harder. Lambert came to the corral each afternoon at first, because Juniper was valuable, and then because the hour felt wrong when he missed it. One Tuesday, the mare paced the fence and tossed her head. Acting on instinct, Lambert stepped into the pen and moved quickly to block her path. Juniper reared her hooves, flashing. "Lambert, stop!" Daisy called out, her voice cracking like a dry branch. Lambert froze. He stepped back slowly, his hands raised, until he was leaning against the rails again. Daisy exhaled, walking the mare down until all 4 hooves were on the ground. She turned to him. "You're too big, and you move too fast." "I was trying to turn her," he said defensively. "You were forcing her." Daisy walked toward him, a loose strand of hair across her cheek. "Every step you take when she has not asked for it tells her she is about to be crushed. You cannot throw your weight around and call the result trust." Her voice lowered. "That is true of horses, Lambert. It is true of people." The street in town came back to him. His arm, his name, his certainty. He had protected Daisy from the laughter, then nearly decided the shape of her, rescue for her. Lambert looked at his boots, then back at her. "Show me what to do." For the next hour, he did not dictate. He took the long line when she handed it to him, stepped back at her flat palm, and moved only when she signaled. Letting Daisy lead should not have felt like surrender. Instead, it felt like relief. In the dust, the distance between them narrowed from rancher and hired trainer to 2 people learning the same rhythm. Her shoulders lowered. Lambert recognized the particular stillness of someone who had stopped expecting the next hand to shove. A few days later, Lambert noticed a dark smudge of blood on the cotton of her left glove. The heavy seams of the old work gloves she wore were rubbing her knuckles raw against the leather lines. He did not mention it. The next morning, he left a pair of soft buckskin gloves on the top rail. They were small enough for her hands, with the heavy seams turned outward so nothing rough would scrape her skin. From the rise above the north pasture, Lambert glanced back and saw Daisy standing by the rail, with the gloves pressed to her chest. He also changed the hour. Supply wagons passed the gate in the afternoons, and their drivers slowed to stare. Lambert moved his business to later in the day, so Daisy could work Juniper at dawn. He never explained the change. He simply made one corner of the world quieter for her. That evening, Lambert was sitting on the wide front porch of the main house, running a whetstone over his pocket knife. He felt a presence before he heard the footsteps. Daisy stood at the bottom of the porch stairs. In her hands was his canvas work coat. She walked up the steps and laid it over the back of a rocking chair. "The left cuff was tearing," she said quietly. "It'll hold now." Lambert examined the cuff. The frayed edge had been bound with heavy thread. No one had asked her to mend it. The gloves had not gone unanswered. "Have you eaten?" he asked, putting the knife away. "I was going back to the cabin." "There's stew on the stove. I could bring a plate out here." He didn't ask her to come inside. He didn't want her to feel trapped in his house. Daisy hesitated. She looked at the empty rocking chair next to his, then at the vast, darkening sky. "All right." They ate on the porch while cattle lowed beyond the darkening corrals. Daisy stole the last potato from his bowl after he claimed he was finished, then raised one brow when he objected. "You said you were done." "I had plans for that potato." "Poor planning is not the cook's fault." Lambert laughed before he could stop himself. The sound startled them both. A week earlier, he had wanted only to shield her from a cruel street. Now he wanted this quarrel over stew, this chair occupied, this woman returning tomorrow evening because she wished to, not because she owed him anything.
2 days later, wagon wheels cut across that quiet. A buckboard rattled into the yard. Wilma Tanner, her face set in a hard, uncompromising line, climbed down. She marched toward the corral where Daisy was working, carrying a heavy, dust-covered object. She threw it over the top rail. It was an old, silver-chased saddle. Their father's saddle. "I found it in the livery loft," Wilma said, her voice carrying across the yard. Lambert, who had been fixing a gate hinge nearby, went still. "The liveryman said you pawned it to him the night you ran off with that drifter, Daisy. You didn't just leave. You stole from your own kin to pay a liar to ruin you." Daisy stood frozen in the center of the pen. The color drained from her face. "Wilma," Lambert warned, his voice a low rumble as he stepped forward. "No, let her hear it," Wilma snapped. "She's parading around this ranch acting like she's going to ride in the Founders' Day Fair," Boaz Tucker told my husband. "If you ride Daisy..." "My daughter's engagement to the banker's son is done. They won't marry into a family that puts its shame on a horse for the whole territory to see." "It's my name," Daisy whispered, her hands trembling. "It's a name you dragged through the mud," Wilma shot back. "You have no right to use it out loud." Wilma turned and marched back to her wagon, driving away in a cloud of dust. Silence fell over the corral. Juniper snorted at the change in the air. Lambert climbed over the rail and stopped several paces from Daisy. She would not look at him. "Tell me what part belongs to you," he said. "Not the part Wilma keeps for herself." "Enough of it." Daisy's voice was hollow. "I took the mare and the saddle. I believed a man who promised me a training yard in Texas. In Dallas, I learned he had a wife and 3 children. I sold the horse for stage fare home." Her fingers curled against her skirt. "I was foolish, and I stole from my father. That much is mine." "You made a grave mistake at 20, Lambert said, anger roughening his voice. "You came home and faced it. No honest debt requires 10 years of public payment. Daisy finally looked up, and the raw grief in her eyes stopped him cold. And why do you care so much? Why did you stand up in the street that day? She took a step toward him. Because you were trying to fix it. You left for Colorado the year before I ran away. You knew I was suffocating in that house, and you left anyway. You're not protecting me, Lambert. You're trying to absolve yourself. The accusation struck where he had kept his oldest shame. He had known how small Wilma and their father made Daisy feel. He had seen it, told himself she was strong, and ridden to Colorado because leaving was easier than asking her to come. Lambert removed his hat. You are right. Part of me came back wanting to mend what I had failed to prevent. That was pride dressed up as kindness. He held her gaze. But pity does not make a man listen for one woman's boots on his porch. It does not make an empty chair trouble him. I want you to stay, Daisy. I will not accept a yes bought with your wages or your roof. Before Daisy could answer, a rider from town trotted up to the fence. It was a messenger from Boaz Tucker. Mr. Ramsey, Miss Brennan. The boy touched his cap. Mr. Tucker says the register closes tomorrow morning. If Miss Brennan's name stays on the trainer's line, he will not answer for any disturbance at the fair. He needs to know whether the mare is in or out. The boy waited with one hand on his saddle horn. Daisy looked at the old silver-chased saddle, then at Juniper. She gave him no answer. By the next afternoon, the cost of that unanswered choice had reached Lambert's office. Lambert was in his office when two men from Kansas walked in. They were cattle buyers representing the largest beef contract of the year. Ramsey, the older one said, bypassing a handshake. We hear you're letting that Brennan woman ride your stock at the fair. We do business with respectable men. We don't want our brand associated with a ranch that flaunts the town's cast-offs. Lambert looked at the contract in the man's hand. It was the largest sale of his year, enough to carry wages and feed through winter without cutting any plans. The door is behind you, gentlemen, Lambert said evenly. Take your contract with you. The men stared, insulted, then turned and walked out. Lambert didn't know Daisy had been standing in the hallway. When he walked out of the office, she was leaning against the wall, her face pale. You lost the Kansas herd, she said. I have other buyers. Don't lie to me, she said. I know what that contract meant. Wilma cornered me at the livery this morning. She said if I withdraw from the fair and if I leave this ranch, she will publicly welcome me back into the family. She'll give me a place in her house. The town will forgive me. Dread settled cold beneath Lambert's ribs. Wilma had offered Daisy the very things the town had withheld: family shelter, a place at a respectable table. The price was her work, and whatever had begun between them. He could have argued or offered more money. Either would turn affection into another bargain she had not asked to make. He took a small iron key from the hall table and placed it on the table between them, where she could choose whether to pick it up. The barn box holds $300, and the bill of sale for a sound gelding, Lambert said. Enough to go wherever you choose. If you need your sister's house, take it. I will not use this ranch to hold you. He made himself finish. Only know that if you ride away, I will look toward that porch every evening and wish I had earned the right to ask you back. He left the key on the table and walked outside before longing made him less honorable than his promise. Lambert did not sleep. He sat on the top rail of the corral while the moon crossed the yard. Giving Daisy a choice was easy when he believed she would choose him. It became the hardest decent thing he had ever done when he understood she might not. An hour before dawn, he heard the crunch of boots on gravel. Daisy walked into the yard without a saddlebag. A lantern swung from one hand. In the other,
She carried the rawhide quirt that had hung from her father's silver-chased saddle. She crossed to Lambert and set the little iron key on the fence rail beside him. "You gave me a road out," she said. "That is the first reason I know I am free to choose the road back." Then she bent the quirt across her knee until it snapped and dropped the pieces in the dust. At the wooden workboard beside the tack room, she wrote in large chalk letters, "Daisy Brennan, trainer." "Send that to Boaz," she said. "My name stays on the entry." Lambert dropped from the fence, landing hard enough to jar his heels. Daisy turned to him. Fear had not vanished from her face. She had simply decided it would no longer give the orders. "I need 10 ranch hands down here in 15 minutes, she ordered, pointing at him. "I need them banging on pots, shaking feed bags, and shouting. And I need you in the center with me. You're my assistant today. You move when I tell you to move." Lambert couldn't help the slow grin that spread across his face. "Yes, ma'am." For the next 2 hours, the corral sounded like a riot. Ranch hands hollered, struck spoons against pans, and snapped feed sacks. Juniper lunged from the noise, but Daisy held the center with her voice and steady hands. Lambert became part of her method. At one signal, he blocked the mare's flight. At the next, he stepped back and gave her room. Each time he obeyed before instinct could make him take over, Daisy trusted him with a little more. When one of the hands yelled out, "Looking good, Miss Ramsey's trainer," Daisy didn't flinch. She called back, "Daisy Brennan, horse trainer." Lambert echoed it immediately, his voice booming over the noise. "You heard her. Miss Brennan is running the yard." When Daisy finally called a halt, Juniper stood, blowing in the center of the pen. The mare stretched out her neck, nudged Lambert's chest, and neatly plucked the black Stetson from his head. This time she carried it to Daisy and dropped it into her hands. Daisy smiled. A real, full smile that reached her eyes. "Even the man knows who to ask before she takes something of yours." Lambert stopped an arm's length from her, while the hands drifted toward breakfast, and sunrise touched the corrals. "Can I walk you back to your cabin?" he asked. Daisy did not answer with words. She unclipped Juniper's cotton lead, placed one end in Lambert's hand, and kept the other. They walked across the yard with 3 feet of rope between them. Not a tether, but a shared line, neither one pulled tight. Founder's Day dawned clear and hot. Main Street was packed with wagons, livestock pens, and hundreds of people from across the territory. When Lambert drove the Ramsey buckboard into town, Daisy sat tall beside him, and Juniper followed behind. Whispers moved along the boardwalk. Wilma watched with pinched disapproval. Boaz Tucker waited beside the registration table, one finger pressed over the line where Daisy Brennan had been written as trainer. When it was time for the premier training exhibition, Boaz took the center of the arena. He held a brass speaking trumpet. "Ladies and gentlemen," Boaz announced, "our next exhibition is presented by the Ramsey Spread. I give you Mr. Lambert Ramsey and his bay mare." Lambert walked into the arena. The crowd applauded respectfully, but Lambert didn't walk toward the center. He walked straight to the edge of the ring, where Daisy stood holding Juniper. He didn't take the reins from her. He turned to face Boaz and the crowd. "The Ramsey Spread paid the fee," Lambert said, his voice carrying without the trumpet. "But I did not train this horse. The name on the trainer's line is Daisy Brennan, and she earned the right to stand in this dirt." He stepped back. He left the space entirely open. Daisy drew one breath. She looked toward Wilma, then toward the Kansas buyers near the rail. At last she looked at Lambert. He gave her one nod and moved farther back. She walked Juniper into the center of the ring. She used neither bridle nor whip. After unclipping the lead,
She guided the high-strung mare through turns, stops, and changes of pace with the shift of her weight, the movement of her hands, and the calm timbre of her voice. Suddenly, a stray dog darted under the fence, barking wildly, snapping at the mare's heels. The crowd gasped. A horse like Juniper should have bolted, kicking blindly into the wooden rails. Daisy didn't panic. She didn't lunge for the horse. She stood perfectly still, dropped her shoulders, and said a single sharp word. Juniper froze, shivering, but kept her eyes on Daisy. The mare did not run. Whatever the dog threatened, Daisy's voice mattered more. A ranch hand caught the dog by the scruff and hauled it clear. Then the crowd erupted, not with the polite applause owed to the Ramsey name, but with the roar of people who understood what it cost to earn trust from a frightened animal. Daisy attached the lead rope and walked toward the exit. Lambert was waiting for her. The crowd kept cheering. Lambert heard every bit of it and cared only that Daisy walked toward him under her own name. Pride pressed hard beneath his breastbone. "May I stand beside you after today, Daisy?" he asked, his voice rough. She stopped. She looked up at him, her eyes shining, but her chin held high. "Beside me, yes. In front of me, no. And you may court me, Lambert, if you can remember the difference." Lambert smiled. "I have been known to learn slowly, but I do learn." Agreed. He offered his arm. This time he didn't put it around her. He waited. Daisy reached out and looped her arm through his, claiming him right back in front of the entire town. 2 hours later, at the community meal behind the church, Boaz Tucker hurried to their table with a plate of roast beef and the eager grin of a man hoping applause had erased his conduct. "A fine display, Lambert, a fine display," Boaz blustered. "I always knew the Ramsey name would elevate the event. Your reputation is spotless, sir. Never a mark against it. That's why we respect you." Lambert set down his fork. Beside him, Daisy's shoulders tightened. Boaz had found a prettier way to say the same old thing. Lambert was spotless, and Daisy was fortunate to stand in his light. "Boaz, that is a handsome speech," Lambert said loudly enough for the nearby tables to hear. "It also is not true. I did not race my last year in Colorado because the circuit barred me." The table went dead silent. Boaz gaped. Lambert did not look away. "A young rider on my crew changed the handicap weights. I learned of it before the race and kept silent. I told myself I was protecting a boy whose widowed mother needed his pay. Truth was, the change favored my horse, and I liked the advantage. When the officials found it, I put my name beneath the statement and took the ban. I did one right thing after one wrong one." He glanced along the listening tables. "I am not spotless, Boaz. I had enough money to cross into another territory and begin again where no one knew the story. Not everyone is granted that mercy." Lambert picked up his fork. Boaz retreated with his untouched beef. Daisy stared at Lambert. Her expression moved from astonishment to anger, and then to something far softer. "You should have told me," she said. "I was ashamed." "So was I." "Then perhaps neither of us gets a pedestal." Her mouth trembled at one corner. "Good. They look uncomfortable." Wilma approached before Lambert could answer. She stopped when 2 women at the next table turned their backs on her, and an old cattleman, who had once laughed at Daisy, lowered his eyes instead of making room. Wilma's mouth tightened. She looked over the crowd as though searching for someone willing to share her outrage, found no one, and swallowed whatever bitter words had risen first. "Daisy," she said at last, smoothing her skirt with an unsteady hand, "you may sit with the family now. People have seen what you can do." Daisy rose. Lambert started to rise with her, but she touched 2 fingers to his sleeve. This belonged to her. "I will not return to your house by pretending the last 10 years did not happen," Daisy said. You may visit my training yard when you can speak my name without shame. Until then, do not offer me a place that costs me my work." Wilma's eyes went to Lambert, as though expecting pressure or rescue. He stayed seated.
Daisy held her sister's gaze until Wilma looked away. Only then did she sit again. Lambert turned his hand palm up on the bench between them. Daisy placed her hand in it not because the town had cheered, and not because he had spoken for her, but because both of them had finally told the truth where it could cost them.
6 weeks later, a new wooden sign stood on the post of a small, neatly fenced acreage at the edge of the Ramsey property. Daisy Brennan, horse training. Daisy stood by the open gate, adjusting a new halter. She paid rent for the land at the rate written in both ledgers, and 3 local ranches had already booked her work. The Kansas contract never returned. Lambert arranged 3 smaller sales at thinner profit and postponed the new South barn. Every hand kept his winter wages. Daisy refused to let him hide the cost of his choice, and Lambert refused to call it a sacrifice he regretted. The sound of hoofbeats made her look up. Lambert rode down the trail on his big roan gelding. He didn't ride through the open gate. He stopped his horse on the public road, stepped down from the saddle, and walked to the fence line. He took off his hat. "Morning, Miss Brennan." "Morning, Mr. Ramsey," she replied. "I have a young colt that needs a gentle hand," Lambert said. "I hear you're the best in the territory. Wondering if I might hire your services, and if I might come in." Daisy smiled and came to the gate. Lambert waited on the public side of it. 6 weeks earlier, he had believed love meant stepping in front of a blow. Daisy had taught him that sometimes it meant standing close enough to help and far enough back for her choice to remain her own. "You may come in as a customer," she said, "and you may stay for supper as the man I have chosen to court. Do not confuse the 2 accounts." "I would not dare. Which one charges more?" "The courtship. You have expensive hats." She opened the gate, uncoiled the long leather lead she carried, and placed one end in his hand while keeping the other. "This time," Daisy said, "we ride together."